Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. First Contact and Rescue. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the bridge of the USS Vigilant, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. What had started as a routine patrol in the Outer Rim had turned into something far more troubling. The energy signatures they'd been tracking for the past 3 days didn't match any known commercial vessels. Contact bearing 047, Commander, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from his station. Energy signature matches the pattern we've been following. Sarah's jaw tightened. After 15 years in Earth's Special Operations Command, she'd developed an instinct for trouble. Show me. The holographic display shifted, revealing a massive cargo vessel. Its hull was a patchwork of repairs and modifications, typical of the independent traders that frequented these sectors. But something was off about the power distribution. Those aren't standard cargo holds, Sarah muttered, noting the unusual energy readings. They're containment cells. The revelation hit her like a punch to the gut. Slavers. Despite humanity's relatively recent arrival on the galactic stage, they'd quickly learned that some things were universal, including the darkness that lurked in sentient hearts. Life signs? She asked, already knowing the answer. Rodriguez's fingers danced across his console. Multiple species. At least 300 signatures. They're packed in there tight, Commander. Sarah's decision was instantaneous. Battle stations. Initiate Protocol 7. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as her crew responded. Protocol 7 was a special operations directive designed specifically for dealing with slavers. No warnings, no negotiations, just swift and decisive action. Ma'am, Communications Officer Park interrupted, we're receiving a distress signal. It's weak, but it's coming from inside one of the containment cells. Sarah leaned forward. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled with static before a voice emerged, soft, melodic, and filled with desperation. To any free vessel, please, we are prisoners. They take us to the markets on Centauri Prime. There are children here. The transmission cut off abruptly, but it was enough. Sarah had heard similar pleas before, but something about this voice struck a chord deep within her. Tactical, target their engines and weapons systems. Security, prepare boarding teams. We're shutting this operation down. The next 20 minutes were a blur of precision and controlled violence. The Vigilant's advanced weapons systems made short work of the slaver vessel's defenses, while Sarah led the boarding party herself. Years of experience had taught her never to delegate the most crucial parts of a mission. The interior of the slave ship was a nightmare of cramped corridors and makeshift cells. The stench of fear and despair hung heavy in the air as Sarah and her team methodically cleared each section. Commander! Sergeant Mills called out. Over here. Sarah moved quickly to his position, her pulse rifle at the ready. Through the reinforced transparent barrier of one of the larger cells, she saw them, dozens of beings from various species, huddled together in fear. But one figure stood apart, standing tall, despite the circumstances. She was humanoid but clearly alien, with skin that seemed to shift between deep purple and midnight blue. Her eyes, when they met Sarah's, were completely silver with no visible pupils. Despite the obvious signs of mistreatment, there was something regal in her bearing. Stand back, Sarah ordered, both to the prisoners and her team. She placed a breaching charge on the cell's lock mechanism. The explosion was controlled, precise, and effective. As the barrier slid open, Sarah stepped forward, her translator working to convert her words into the most common galactic languages. I'm Commander Chen of the Earth Special Operations Command. You're safe now. The alien woman with silver eyes stepped forward. I am Kara, she said, her voice, the same one from the distress call. You heard us? We did, Sarah replied, something in Kara's voice stirring an unexpected protective instinct. And we came. The others, Kara gestured to her fellow prisoners, many are too weak to walk. And there are more cells, many more. Sarah nodded, already calling for medical teams. As she organized the evacuation, she couldn't help but notice how Kara immediately began helping others, showing a strength of character that transcended species. The operation took hours. In the end, they rescued over 300 beings from dozens of different species. The slaver crew, those who survived the initial assault, were detained for transport to Earth jurisdiction. Sarah had seen similar scenes before, but something about this one felt different. Later, in the Vigilance medical bay, Sarah found Kara helping the medical team communicate with the various rescued species. Her linguistic abilities were remarkable. "You speak multiple languages?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious. Kara turned, those silver eyes seeming to look straight through Sarah's carefully maintained professional facade. "My people, we were scholars once. Before the wars, before the collapse. Now we are scattered, sold by our own leaders for protection that never came." The bitterness in her voice was raw, personal. Sarah understood there was more to this story, much more. "You're safe now," she said, meaning it. "Earth takes a dim view of slavery. We'll make sure you all get proper care and assistance in returning home." Kara's expression darkened. "Home is not safe. Not for me. Not anymore." Something in Sarah's chest tightened. She'd seen that look before, in the eyes of refugees and survivors. "Then we'll figure something else out," she found herself saying. "There are options." For the first time, Kara smiled, a small gesture that somehow made her entire being seem to glow slightly. "You humans are surprising. We had heard stories, but to see it firsthand. You came for us, fought for us, without knowing who we were or what we could offer in return." Sarah shrugged, slightly uncomfortable with the praise. "It's what we do. It's what we should all do." "Perhaps," Kara replied thoughtfully. "But not all do. Your people are young in the galaxy, Commander Chen, yet you show a courage and moral certainty that many older races have forgotten." Before Sarah could respond, her communicator chirped. Another possible slaver signal had been detected, further out in the rim. As she processed the information, she noticed Kara watching her intently. "You're going after them," Kara stated. It wasn't a question. "Yes. Take me with you." Sarah started to protest, but Kara held up a hand. "I know their routes, their protocols. I learned much during my captivity. Let me help you stop them." Looking into those silver eyes, Sarah saw something she recognized, the same fire that had driven her to join special operations, to fight against the darkness in the galaxy. She found herself nodding. "Welcome aboard, Kara," she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of agreement. "Let's go hunting." As Kara's hand clasped hers, Sarah felt the strange sensation that this was more than just another mission. It was the beginning of something much larger, a partnership that would change not only their lives but the very nature of human-alien relations in the galaxy. The Vigilance engines hummed to life as they prepared to track down their next target. In the medical bay, humans and aliens worked together to heal and comfort the rescued prisoners. And on the bridge, a human commander and an alien scholar began planning their next move in a war against those who would profit from suffering. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's arrival on the cosmic stage wasn't just another footnote in history, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where the strong would no longer be allowed to prey upon the weak with impunity. And it all started with a distress call and a commander who refused to look the other way. Bonds forged in crisis. 3 days into their hunt, Sarah found Kara in the Vigilance observation deck, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. The alien woman had proven invaluable, her knowledge of slaver operations helping them track 2 more ships. But tonight, something was different in her posture. "You're troubled," Sarah stated, moving to stand beside her. Kara didn't turn. "I received a transmission from my homeworld. The council claims I was never sold, that I fled, stealing valuable state secrets." Her voice carried a weight of betrayal. "They're calling for my immediate return." Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm. That's not happening. No, Kara agreed, finally turning to face her. But it confirms what I've long suspected. The corruption goes deeper than simple slavers. My people's leadership, they're actively involved in the trade. The revelation hung heavy in the recycled air of the observation deck. Sarah had seen enough political intrigue to know this complicated things significantly. Tell me everything, she said, settling into a nearby seat. Kara's story poured out like a flood long held back. Her people, the Lisani, had once been peaceful scholars and scientists. But decades of economic pressure from larger galactic powers had led to desperate choices. The council had started selling their own people, disguising it as cultural exchange programs or diplomatic postings. I was a historian, Kara explained, her skin darkening with emotion. I discovered financial records, treaties signed in secret. When I confronted the council, she gestured to herself. Well, you found me in that cell. Sarah processed this information, her tactical mind already seeing the larger implications. This isn't just about slavery anymore. We're looking at government-sanctioned trafficking, possibly involving multiple species. Precisely. Kara's silver eyes seemed to glow with intensity. And now that I'm free, working with humans, I'm a liability they can't afford. As if on cue, the ship's alarms blared. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came over the comm, "Commander to the bridge." Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Sarah and Kara ran to the bridge, arriving to find the tactical display lit up with hostile signatures. For warships, their design clearly Lisani, had surrounded the Vigilant. "They're hailing us," Park reported. On screen, Sarah ordered, positioning herself in front of the command chair. Kara stood slightly behind her, a united front. The screen flickered to life, revealing a Lisani official whose elaborate robes couldn't quite hide the predatory gleam in his eyes. "Commander Chen. I am High Counselor Vexthor. You are harboring a fugitive of the Lisani Confederation. Return her immediately, or we will be forced to take aggressive action." Sarah's response was diplomatic but firm. "Counselor, Kara is under Earth's protection. We have evidence of serious crimes committed by members of your government. I suggest we discuss this through proper diplomatic channels. This is not a negotiation, Commander." Vexthor's voice turned cold. "Your species is young, inexperienced. You don't understand the complexities of galactic politics. Return Kara now, or face the consequences." Sarah felt Kara tense behind her. But years of command had taught her to recognize when someone was bluffing. The Lisani ship's weapon signatures were impressive, but their positioning was defensive rather than aggressive. They were afraid. "Counselor," Sarah replied, allowing a hint of steel to enter her voice, "let me be clear. The Vigilant is a special operations vessel. We're faster, better armed, and have nothing to lose. If you fire on us, the evidence we've gathered will automatically transmit to every major news network in the galaxy. Is that really a risk you want to take?" The threat hung in the air. Sarah could almost see the calculations running behind Vexthor's eyes. Finally, he spoke, "You're making a grave mistake, Commander. This isn't over." The transmission cut off, and moments later, the Lisani ships retreated into hyperspace. "They'll be back," Kara said quietly. "With more ships?" Sarah nodded, already formulating plans. Lieutenant Rodriguez, set course for Earth. Maximum speed. Park, get me a secure channel to Special Operations Command. We need to move fast. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Sarah shared their findings with Earth Command, who immediately grasped the significance. Orders came back quickly: protect Kara at all costs, gather more evidence, and prepare for potential diplomatic fallout. Later, in Sarah's private quarters, she and Kara pored over the data they'd collected. Star charts, financial records, transmission logs, all painting a picture of corruption that spanned dozens of worlds. "Look at this," Kara said, highlighting a series of transactions. "These aren't just random sales. They're selecting specific individuals, scientists, scholars, artists. They're targeting the intellectuals, anyone who might question the system. Sarah studied the pattern, feeling a cold anger build in her chest. They're systematically dismantling your society's ability to resist. Yes. Kara's voice was heavy with grief. And replacing them with those loyal to the council. In a generation or two, there won't be anyone left who remembers what we once were. Sarah reached out, hesitating only briefly, before placing her hand on Kara's shoulder. The alien's skin was surprisingly warm, almost vibrating with suppressed emotion. We won't let that happen, Sarah promised. Earth may be young, but we've seen this pattern before in our own history. We know where it leads. Kara looked at her with those mesmerizing silver eyes. Why do you care so much? This isn't your fight. Maybe that's exactly why we care, Sarah replied thoughtfully. We're too young to be cynical, too stubborn to accept that this is just how things are. And honestly? She smiled slightly. We humans have a bit of a problem with bullies. For the first time since the confrontation, Kara laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes. You certainly do. It's rather endearing. The moment was interrupted by another alarm, but this one was different, a specific pattern that made Sarah's blood run cold. What is it? Kara asked, noting her reaction. A distress signal, Sarah replied, already moving. One of ours. An Earth colony in the Proxima sector is under attack. She paused at the door. Want to help me save more lives? Kara stood, her bearing once again regal, despite her fatigue. Always. As they rushed to the bridge, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how quickly Kara had become an integral part of her crew. The aliens' presence had changed something fundamental about their mission. It wasn't just about enforcing laws anymore, it was about fighting for a better galaxy. The Vigilance engines roared to life as they changed course, racing to answer another call for help. On the bridge, humans and a single Lisani worked together with practiced efficiency, their differences forgotten in the face of a common cause. The galaxy was changing. Old powers were facing new challenges, and long-accepted evils were finally being questioned. And at the heart of it all was an unlikely partnership between a human commander who couldn't ignore injustice and an alien scholar who refused to let her people's legacy die. The real question was, would the galaxy change fast enough? Uncovering the truth. The colony on Proxima 4 was in chaos when the Vigilant arrived. Lisani warships had already retreated, but they left behind a scene of calculated devastation. Not widespread destruction, but precise strikes against specific targets, research facilities, libraries, communication centers. This wasn't a random attack, Sarah observed as she and Kara led a ground team through the smoking ruins of the colony's main archive. They were looking for something. Kara knelt beside a destroyed data terminal, her silver eyes reflecting the emergency lights. Or someone. She held up a partially melted data crystal. These archives held cultural exchange records. Lists of everyone who passed through this colony in the last 5 years. Sarah's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. They're covering their tracks. Erasing evidence of their trafficking operations. Commander. Lieutenant Rodriguez called from across the rubble-strewn room. We found survivors in the secure basement. You're going to want to see this. Below ground, they found 30 people, humans and aliens alike, huddled in a reinforced storage room. But it was the figure standing protectively in front of them that caught Sarah's attention. Another Lisani, his blue-purple skin darker than Kara's, his bearing military despite his civilian clothes. Nexar? Kara's voice was barely a whisper. The male Lisani's silver eyes widened in recognition. Kara? We thought you were dead. Sarah watched their reunion with interest, noting the complex emotions playing across Kara's features. Friend of yours? My brother, Kara explained, her voice tight with emotion. He disappeared 2 years ago. Another diplomatic posting that no one was allowed to question. Nexar's story came out quickly. He'd been part of the Lisani military's research division before discovering the same corruption Kara had found. But instead of confronting the council directly, he'd escaped, using his military training to establish an underground network helping others flee. The attack today, he explained, gathering with Sarah and Kara in the Vigilance secure briefing room, wasn't just about destroying records. The council knows about my network. They're trying to eliminate everyone involved. Sarah studied the tactical displays showing the attack pattern. How many people have you helped escape? Hundreds, Nexar replied. Not just Lisani. We found similar operations in at least 6 other species governments. It's all connected, the slave trade, the targeted disappearances, the political maneuvering. They're calling themselves the Consortium. Kara's skin darkened with anger. The agricultural crisis on Vega 3, the medical supply shortages in the Centauri systems. All manufactured, Nexar confirmed. They're creating desperate situations, then offering solutions that require populations to be relocated or resources to be redistributed. It's slavery and exploitation hidden behind bureaucracy. Sarah felt a cold fury building in her chest. We need proof. Something concrete that Earth Command and other independent worlds can't ignore. Nexar's silver eyes gleamed. That's why I came here. The Proxima archives contained part of an encryption key, one piece of many that, when combined, will unlock the Consortium's secure communications network. My people have been gathering the pieces, but we needed a safe place to bring them together. The Vigilant, Kara said, understanding dawning on her face. Sarah nodded slowly. Earth ships have some of the strongest quantum encryption systems in known space. We could potentially crack their network, expose everything. It's not that simple, Nexar warned. The remaining pieces are scattered across heavily guarded facilities. And the Consortium has spies everywhere. The moment we start moving openly against them, they'll kill everyone involved with the resistance, Kara finished grimly. Sarah stood, pacing the briefing room as she thought. Years of special operations training had prepared her for complex missions, but this was beyond anything in the manual. They needed to gather intelligence, protect civilians, and strike at multiple targets simultaneously, all while avoiding detection by an enemy that had infiltrated governments across the galaxy. Then she smiled, an expression that made both Lisani look at her curiously. What are you thinking, Commander? Kara asked, recognizing the look from their previous missions. I'm thinking it's time Earth showed the galaxy why you don't underestimate the new kids on the block, Sarah replied. Lieutenant Rodriguez, get me a secure line to Earth Command. Priority 1. The next few hours were a flurry of encrypted communications and tactical planning. Sarah's reputation within special operations meant her requests for additional resources were quickly approved. Soon, 5 more Earth vessels were en route to rendezvous with the Vigilant, each carrying elite teams specifically trained for covert operations. We'll split into teams, Sarah explained, outlining the plan to her expanded command. Each ship will target a different facility where the encryption keys are held. The Vigilant will coordinate the overall operation and handle the final data compilation. The Consortium will detect multiple Earth ships moving through their space, one of the other commanders pointed out. Sarah's smile turned predatory. Exactly. They'll think we're running standard anti-slavery patrols. A show of force from the aggressive young species that doesn't understand subtle diplomacy. Understanding dawned on Kara's face. While they're watching the ships, Nexar's resistance network will move the keys, Sarah confirmed. Small teams, civilian vessels, nothing to draw attention. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late. The planning continued late into the night. Sarah found herself increasingly relying on Kara's insights, the alien woman's deep understanding of both politics and her people's psychology proving invaluable. They worked in seamless synchronization, each anticipating the other's thoughts and concerns. During a brief break, Sarah found Kara alone in the observation deck again, her favorite spot for reflection. Your brother's resistance, Sarah said quietly, they've lost people, haven't they? Kara nodded, her skin rippling with darker patterns of grief. Many. Good people who believed in something better than what we'd become. She turned to face Sarah. That's why this has to work. Their sacrifices have to mean something. Sarah moved closer, drawn by the passion in Kara's voice. It will. I promise you. How can you be so certain? Kara asked, her silver eyes searching Sarah's face. The odds against us. Because I've learned something about your people through you, Sarah replied. You're not just scholars, you're survivors. And now you're fighting back. She gestured to the stars visible through the viewport. Besides, humanity's entire history is about beating impossible odds. It's kind of our thing. Kara laughed softly, the sound making Sarah's heart skip in a way she wasn't quite ready to examine. You really are remarkable creatures. Before Sarah could respond, Nexar's voice came over the comm. Commander, Kara, we've got the first reports from the resistance cells. Operation Shadow Key is a go. They shared one last look before heading to the bridge. The next few days would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of multiple civilizations. The consortium had spent years building their web of corruption and control. Now it was time to tear it all down. As they walked, Sarah felt Kara's hand briefly touch her arm, a gesture of trust and solidarity that transcended their species' differences. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The hunt was on, and humanity was about to show the galaxy why you should never underestimate those who fight for what's right, no matter the odds. The final gambit. Operation Shadow Key unfolded over 3 intense weeks. Earth ships conducted loud, obvious patrols while Nexar's resistance network quietly moved their precious cargo, pieces of the encryption key that would expose the consortium's entire operation. Sarah stood on the Vigilance Bridge, watching the tactical display as another piece of the puzzle arrived. 8 down, 1 to go. But the last one would be the hardest. The final key is on Lisani Prime itself, Kara announced, studying the intelligence reports. In the Council Chamber's secure vault. Of course it is, Sarah muttered. Why make anything easy? The past weeks had changed both of them. Kara's presence on the bridge had become so natural that the crew could hardly remember a time before she was there. And Sarah? Sarah found herself increasingly aware of the alien woman's every movement, every subtle change in her skin's coloring that betrayed her emotions. The council's holding an emergency session in 2 days, Nexar reported, joining them at the tactical station. Discussing the human threat to galactic stability. Every major consortium member will be there. Perfect timing, Sarah said, a plan already forming. They'll be so focused on us, they won't see the real threat coming. The plan they developed was audacious, perhaps even insane. The Vigilant would lead the Earth fleet in an apparent show of force, demanding to address the Council about the slaver attacks on human colonies. Meanwhile, a small team would infiltrate the secured lower levels of the Council chamber. I should lead the infiltration team, Kara insisted during the planning session. I know the building, the security protocols. Exactly why you can't go, Sarah interrupted. They'll be watching for you specifically. Your brother too. She met Kara's silver eyes steadily. This one has to be human. We're the wild card they don't fully understand yet. The argument that followed was intense, but brief. In the end, logic prevailed. Sarah would lead the infiltration team herself, while Kara coordinated from the Vigilant using her intimate knowledge of Lisani's security systems. The night before the operation, Sarah found Kara in their now shared quarters, preparing the specialized equipment they'd need. You're worried, Sarah observed. Kara's skin rippled with dark patterns of concern. The Council chamber's defenses, they're designed to be lethal. One mistake. Hey. Sarah moved closer, placing a hand on Kara's shoulder. The contact sent a subtle warmth through both of them. We've beaten worse odds. Have we? Kara turned to face her, their proximity suddenly electric. Sarah, if something happens to you. The use of her first name, rare from the formal Lisani, made Sarah's breath catch. Nothing's going to happen. I've got too much to come back for. The moment hung between them, heavy with unspoken feelings. Then the mission alarm sounded, calling them back to duty. The next morning, the Vigilant led 5 Earth ships into Lisani space. The response was immediate, dozens of consortium warships moving to intercept. They're deploying exactly as predicted, Rodriguez reported from Tactical. Sarah, already in her infiltration gear, nodded. Good. Keep them focused on the fleet. Kara, you have the bridge. Their eyes met one last time before Sarah headed for the shuttle bay. Everything they couldn't say was there in that look. The infiltration went smoothly at first. Sarah's team, disguised as maintenance workers, made it through the upper security checkpoints using credentials supplied by resistance sympathizers. The real challenge began in the sublevels. Security patrol approaching, Kara's voice warned through their encrypted comms. Third junction ahead. Sarah signaled her team to hide as heavy footsteps passed their position. The council chamber security systems were state-of-the-art, but they had one weakness: they were designed to detect Lisani infiltrators. Humans gave off slightly different biometric signatures. They reached the vault level just as alarms began blaring through the building. They're starting to suspect something, Kara reported, tension evident in her voice. Sarah, you need to hurry. The vault itself was a masterpiece of security engineering. But Sarah had spent weeks studying its specifications with Kara, learning every detail. Her fingers flew over the control panel, implementing the bypass sequence they'd developed. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing a room filled with data crystals. Finding the right one took precious minutes they barely had. Multiple security teams converging on your position, Kara warned. 2 minutes at most. Sarah grabbed the crystal and turned to her team. Time to make some noise. She pulled out the second part of their plan, a very special device courtesy of Earth's R&D division. Above, in orbit, the space battle was reaching its climax. Earth ships danced through consortium formations, putting on a magnificent show of apparent desperation. They're completely focused on the fleet, Nexar reported from his tactical station. Not a single ship watching the surface. Kara allowed herself a small smile. Humans really were excellent at being distracting when they wanted to be. The explosion from the council chamber's lower levels took everyone by surprise. As security forces rushed to contain what looked like a major attack, a small maintenance shuttle quietly lifted off from a secondary landing pad. Package secured, Sarah's voice came through the comm. Although I think we might have caused a slight mess in the vault area. Kara felt relief flood through her. Define slight mess. Let's just say they're going to need a new vault. And possibly a new sublevel. The shuttle docked with the Vigilant just as the consortium forces realized they'd been duped. But by then it was too late. On the bridge, Sarah handed the final crystal to Kara. Ready to show the galaxy what their leaders have been up to? Kara took the crystal with trembling hands. 9 pieces, collected at tremendous risk, containing the key to exposing decades of corruption and abuse. Commander, Rodriguez called out, we're being hailed by the consortium fleet. They're demanding our immediate surrender. Sarah grinned, looking more alive than ever, despite the wounds and burns from her escape. Put them on screen. I think it's time we shared some interesting data with them. As Kara began the decryption process, she watched Sarah take command of the situation with her usual confident grace. Humans were remarkable enough on their own, but this one was something special. The galaxy was about to change forever, and it had taken the combined efforts of a noble but fallen species and humanity's stubborn refusal to accept injustice to make it happen. The final battle was about to begin. A new dawn. The data streamed across every communications channel in Lisani space. Financial records, secret orders, private communications, the full scope of the consortium's corruption laid bare for all to see. Kara's hands moved swiftly over the Vigilance communications array, ensuring nothing could stop the transmission. They're trying to jam us, Rodriguez reported from Tactical. Sarah's voice was calm, confident. Too late. We're broadcasting on every frequency, through every relay station in range. The truth is out there now. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. On dozens of worlds, populations long suppressed by the consortium began to rise up. The carefully maintained facade of legitimate government began to crumble. Multiple ships breaking formation, necks are announced, watching the tactical display. Consortium fleet cohesion is falling apart. Through the view screen, they could see it happening. Ships that had been threatening the Earth fleet moments before were now turning their weapons on each other. Some were firing on the council chamber below, others trying to flee. Incoming transmission, Park called out. It's High Counselor Vexthor. The Lisani leader's face appeared on screen, his usual composure shattered by rage and fear. What have you done? You've destroyed centuries of order, of stability. No, Kara replied, stepping forward to stand beside Sarah. We've exposed centuries of lies. Of exploitation. The people know the truth, now, about the slave trade, about the manufactured crises, about all of it. You naive fool, Vexthor spat. The galaxy needs order. Structure. Without the consortium's guidance, there will be chaos. Sarah's voice cut through his ranting. Maybe. But it will be honest chaos. And from it, something better can grow. She turned to Rodriguez. End transmission. The screen went dark just as the first explosions began blooming in the council chamber. The old order was quite literally crumbling. Commander, Rodriguez called out urgently, we're picking up multiple distress calls. Some of the consortium ships, they're refusing to fire on civilian targets. They're requesting asylum. Sarah nodded. Grant it. Signal the Earth fleet to begin evacuation procedures for any ship that stands down. She turned to Kara. Your people are choosing a side. Kara's skin was rippling with complex patterns of emotion. They're choosing the truth. Finally. The next hours were a blur of activity. The Vigilant coordinated rescue operations, preventing the dying consortium from taking vengeance on civilian populations. Earth's fleet, soon joined by ships from other independent worlds, worked to stabilize the situation. In the midst of it all, Sarah and Kara worked in seamless synchronization, each anticipating the other's needs and decisions. Their crew watched with knowing looks as their commander and the Lisani scholar moved around each other like binary stars locked in orbit. Finally, as the immediate crisis began to stabilize, Sarah found a moment to retreat to her quarters. She was exhausted, running on stims and adrenaline for too long. She didn't hear Kara enter until the alien woman spoke. The provisional government is asking for help, Kara said softly. They want Earth's assistance in establishing new systems, new laws. They're particularly interested in your anti-slavery regulations. Sarah turned, taking in the sight of Kara in the dim light of her quarters. The alien woman's skin was glowing softly, a sign of strong emotion among her people. What about you? Sarah asked. They'll need people who remember what the Lisani were before all this. Teachers, historians. Are you trying to get rid of me, Commander? Kara's tone was light, but there was an undercurrent of tension. Sarah moved closer, drawn as always to Kara's presence. Never. But I don't want to hold you back. Your people need you. My people need to learn to stand on their own again, Kara replied. And I. She paused, her silver eyes meeting Sarah's. I need to be where I can do the most good. Where I belong. The moment stretched between them, years of unspoken feelings crystallizing into clarity. Sarah reached out, her hand gently touching the luminescent patterns rippling across Kara's skin. And where is that? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Here, Kara answered simply, closing the distance between them. With you. Their first kiss was gentle, exploratory, an acknowledgement of all they'd been through together and a promise of what was to come. When they finally parted, both were glowing, Kara literally and Sarah metaphorically. Well, Sarah said, a smile playing at her lips, I suppose I should inform Earth Command that they're getting a permanent Lisani cultural advisor for the Vigilant. They might have questions about that arrangement, Kara teased. Let them question, Sarah replied, pulling Kara close again. We've faced worse. The next few months saw massive changes throughout known space. The fall of the consortium revealed similar corruption in other governments, leading to a wave of reforms and revolutions. Earth, with its strong anti-slavery stance and reputation for direct action, found itself in an unexpected position of moral leadership. The Vigilant remained at the forefront, its human commander and Lisani advisor working together to help stabilize troubled regions and protect vulnerable populations. Their relationship became something of a symbol, proof that different species could not only work together but find deep, meaningful connections. 1 year after the fall of the consortium, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Vigilant, watching a new sunrise over a free Lisani prime. Kara's arms wrapped around her from behind, their bodies fitting together perfectly despite their different species. Having deep thoughts? Kara asked, her skin glowing with contentment. Just thinking about that first day, Sarah replied. When we found your distress call. Did you ever imagine it would lead to all this? Honestly? I was just hoping to survive. Kara's voice turned thoughtful. But that's what you humans do, isn't it? You take survival and turn it into something more. Something better. Sarah turned in Kara's arms, studying the face that had become more precious to her than anything in the galaxy. We had help. A certain brave scholar who refused to let her people's legacy die. We make a good team, Kara agreed, leaning in for a kiss. Below them, the sun rose over a changed galaxy. The old order had fallen, and in its place something new was growing, something built on truth, justice, and the unlikely love between a human commander and the alien she'd rescued. The Vigilant's engines hummed to life as new orders came in. Somewhere out there, someone needed help. And as always, they would answer the call.